A very good morning, colleagues, students, and presenters. Welcome to day one of the Psychology Professionals Workshop. My name is Litlora Nolo Maenga. I'm a trainee career guidance practitioner at UNISA Johannesburg campus, and it is my great pleasure to be your program director for the day. I would now like to call up Ms. Mabua to do the opening and welcome for us. Ms. Mabua, the floor is yours.
As I have been introduced, my name is Mama Shumabua. I'm a student counselor here in Johannesburg for Gauteng region of UNISA, under the Directorate for Counseling and Career Development. Firstly, I just want to indicate to all of you that the Psychology Professional event today turns 5 years. Meaning that from 2020, we had our first event, which was somehow a trial and error kind of an event. It is when it was established, and the reason why it was also established, it was because of the fact that we were not able to reach to our students due to COVID, and because of the fact that we also understand the dynamics that also comes with the profession, who to contact, when to contact who, and also the fact that you need proper career planning and career counseling for you to be to succeed in this profession, and also to just prepare yourself for the journey ahead of you. We realized that we could not reach students during that time, and that's when we decided, let's have this event so that we can reach as many students as we can. This is where it was established, and we can proudly say we have seen it growing, moving from one place to another, having so many successes and its own challenges, of course. And it was also, as expanded to other colleges. It also expanded to other regional offices in UNISA. So now it's no longer just a Gauteng region event, but it also goes beyond Gauteng, covering all the students of UNISA. Like I said, the reason why the workshop was started, it was mainly for us to reach as many students as we can, and to ensure that all the students of UNISA get the support that they need where the psychology profession is concerned. During this event, we invite all the categories that are acknowledged and known by HPCSA, all the professionals in all the categories, including registered counselors, psychometrists, clinical psychologists, educational psychologists, counseling psychologists, industrial and organizational psychologists, as well as research psychology. So come through and share their journey and share their knowledge of the profession and the journey that they have taken since they started with the profession. So we are making sure that our students get the first-hand information from the people who have walked the journey. It's not only for us to say we're giving career guidance, but also to be in touch with people who have walked the journey, who understand the journey more than some of us, or more than people who have not really went through the path. When you speak to a clinical psychologist now, you know exactly what is needed for one to become a clinical psychologist. This is why we decided to have this event, so that you can have the feel of what it means to be a professional in the psychology field. And as I said, we invite all the professionals and also the stakeholders that are connected to the profession to also share information. So today we are going to be focusing only on the professionals, and tomorrow we are going to have the stakeholders who will be presenting, sharing information in relation to what they offer, what can support you as our students. So please, like Khawnola said, just have a pen and paper, put all the notes down and all the questions that we might have, and also take the contacts, if our presenters share their contacts, take their contacts so that you can also expand to more on what you want to know regarding the profession. I'm happy today, like I said, it's our 5th year, and it means that, you know, we are growing bit by bit, and it shows that also our students really do appreciate what we are offering to them. And with all of that being said, I just want to indicate that the event is officially open, and we welcome you. We hope that you enjoy the event. Thank you so much.
So without further ado, I'd like to call up our first speaker, Ms. Savannah, who will be talking to us about becoming a registered counselor. But before I call her, I just want to introduce her quickly. So Ms. Savannah is a registered counselor working in the higher education in wellness team and co-runs private practice in Sandton, Johannesburg. Ms. Savannah enjoys working with animals with an interest in dog therapy.
So I think a first starting point I want to say was one of the most impactful quotes that I had was Newton and the apple, Freud and anxiety, Young and dreams, Piaget and his children, Darwin and Galapagos, tortoises, Marx and English factories, white and street corners. What are you obsessed with? At the end of the day, with psychology, it's a long journey, whether you decide to become a registered counselor, a psychologist, or psychometrist, whatever field that you're going into, you have to have some form of obsession with it. What are you really interested in doing? And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. So think about this as you go throughout your 2 days. What is it that you want, are you obsessed with? So for me, when I saw this, I was already a registered counselor at that stage, and I was very curious about how I can have an impact being a registered counselor in the mental health field, because sometimes it is a section that is often overlooked. Okay, so just some background information about myself, and then I'll explain a little bit about how to get onto this road of being a registered counselor and how it can benefit you. So I work currently at AGRS, which is a private higher education institute in the wellness team. And I have worked here since I've registered as a registered counselor in 2018. And I've also co-run private practice in Sandton. And I see a variety of students from, different backgrounds, different age groups, and so forth. And primarily, I work in the education field and in practice the same capacity to a degree. So I've also completed my PCGE, so my postgrad in education, and I also hold a master's degree in community mental health promotion. So I am quite interested in community engagement and community development as well, and how our role as a registered counselor really does fit in the diverse South African setting. So being a registered counselor, I've said previously, is often sometimes overlooked or something that is considered as a sidestep while you get into professional masters. And even though that might be the case for some people, which is perfectly normal and fine, it is also a valid career choice, and you can make great impact being a registered counselor. So what is the role of it? So when thinking about making this presentation or how to speak to you guys, I often thought like the role is overlooked, and what does a registered counselor do? So it was designed essentially to make psychological services accessible to the diverse African population. So it was supposed to bridge the gap between seeing a psychologist and having that preventative intervention. So the role is short-term psychological interventions, focusing to promote the enhancement of well-being, particularly in a community setting. That doesn't mean that you don't see clients one-on-one, and doesn't mean that you can't open your own private practice, which I think is sometimes also very much overlooked as well. So if you're thinking to yourself, is there job opportunities for registered counselors? I always like to say yes, but most important thing is also being innovative and creating the role for yourself. Okay, so just also going into a little bit about this, and I'm going to just touch in on how I've worked in these little aspects from being a registered counselor. So Form 258, if you are interested in becoming a registered counselor, whether it's just something that's piqued your interest, I really do suggest you look at the HPCSA, the minimal training scope of practice of registered counselors, so you have a better understanding and where you go. Scope of practice is always something to reflect on and look on so that you know where the bounds of your practices. So even if you are going to apply for clinical masters, it's like research psychology, I highly recommend looking at what it takes to do so and what the HPCSA has guided you in that process. So psychological intervention. So one of my I think the main thing when you look at a registered counselor is psychological intervention, which is short term. And I do think that it's so necessary to have these short-term interventions because it gives people and I'm so used to saying students, it gives people the capability and empowerment to seek their own, they use their inner resources to go for a crisis that they might have had. And that could be, counseling. When I first became a registered counselor, I was like, oh, counseling's out for me. I never want to counsel again. I'd rather focus on, research or assessment or something else, but I'm not a fan of counseling. And I've counseled since the day I've got my board exam results. And it's really about the fact that it is filling in that gap. And it's also about helping you understand what is going on in the diverse content of South Africa. And interventions are not just counseling, it's also workshops, psychoeducation. So psychoeducation workshops are very informative, very, needed, because sometimes, you just sit in a group and you're listening and something just picks up and then it stirs you looking or seeking assistance otherwise. And also it's not just about mental health issues, it's about things that maybe sometimes go underlooked, about just taking care of yourself, that often we are too busy or don't have the time to do so. Mindfulness sessions, so forth, those are things that I've practiced in and think that it's such an important intervention that can be used not just in student population, but in general. This is something I know that we focus on, but it isn't the only aspect of being a registered counselor or RC. Just speaking from, when you become an RC or you are an health professional in general, you always have to network and know what other people are doing in your field so that you can offer correct professional referral. So I have colleagues who work in rehab, who work in educational facilities, as well as hospitals. Being a registered counselor doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to work in that clinical setting, private practice, HR. So it's really a diverse category where you can work in so many places, but it's where you have interest. I found that my interest is very much in education and research, and that's where I'd like to stay. But for a lot of people, it's thinking, where do I fit in? And the only way you can get that is from volunteering, really lending your time and experience to things and see where you fit in. So I was like, also when I first started, I thought to myself, you know what, I'd love to work in rehab. I think I can, such a lovely setting. I think I definitely do that. And during my internship here, I got the privilege to work at NGO rehab and probably realized very quickly not the environment for me and very much not something that I could do every day. So obviously it's something that you need to experience yourself to see which environment best suits you. A psychological assessment, often also diagnosed, like we stay away. Registered counselors like to quickly refer to psychometrists or psychs, so forth for our assessments, but we are permitted to administer psychological assessments. You will be trained when you do your BPsych or BPsych equivalent, and it is a wonderful practice, and I know that you will be hearing about it as this day goes on. But it's not something that registered counselors aren't permitted. We can't obviously perform all assessments. There are certain ones that psychologists are only allowed to perform, and it is important that you do get training and you are capable of administrating the assessment within the scope of practice. You can't also just be administrating stuff that will become unethical. And like I said, it's just a wonderful aspect to show that very versatile scope of practice. So project implementation and management, something that also we are very much capable of doing, whether it be psychological or whether it be something more academic or in organizational, industrial kind of view, we are able to do this and are trained to do it. And it's a wonderful aspect if you are more inclined in that way. Very much something that I have touched in and dabbled on in our national wellness projects, but it is something that we can always learn and develop. Policy and standard implementation. As a registered counselor, you're able to work with the development of policy, which I find very riveting. And if you ever want to think, how do we make change? And it starts from a policy level. And it's something that I have engaged with, whether it be out of my higher education with the HPCSA and so forth. It's something that I really do believe it has great value. And as a registered counselor, you do have the ability to work in this and develop policy. And policy informs what we do. So if you are someone who wants to go from grassroots level, this is really beneficial, and noted that you really can have a say in that. Professional practice and referral. We obviously work within our scope, and we do not diagnose. That is a very important thing. We do not, state what we might have assumptions or from our knowledge know what it is, but it's not in our scope to diagnose. And we will then, if we feel, this client needs long-term therapy, they need a diagnosis, we then will have our referral and know what we are referring for as well. So that is a very important aspect, because you really do need to know where does it fit in. Okay, so that's just going through that. I just wanted to speak a little bit about how do you become a registered counselor. So you've heard all the wonderful things about being a registered counselor, and I'll touch a little bit about the negative stuff that might be associated with it, but not to denounce the qualification and so, but just so you're aware. So the first way to become a registered counselor is to do essentially it is called professional qualifications. The first one is a Bachelor of Psychology degree, which I had the privilege of completing. It is a 4-year degree. It's academic and practical, and in your final year, you do 720 hours, supervised hours at accredited internship sites. And I'll just speak a little bit about my experience in this. So when I enrolled to the Bachelor of Psychology degree, I wanted to be able to practice as soon as possible and be able to gain some practical elements as well, because I had the idea that I would like to be a psychologist. And from the get-go, from my first lecture, not even my first lecture, in orientation and induction, they handed me the scope of practice. They told me how I would need to become a registered counselor, and that I would need to sign up as a student registered counselor from the first semester, which I did. And obviously not everyone is made for this, so we had a lot of dropouts or people changing to more general degrees because they just felt that this was too intensive. And throughout my years, whether I had counseling skills as a subject or I had therapeutic methods, which are subjects that you probably have you're engaging with or hear about. We have always worked under the parameter of you're a student registered counselor. What would you do in this case? So upholding ethics, our assignments and so forth were always very aligned that we were working in this parameter. And it was a wonderful experience. It was also very difficult because it really does test your ability to balance work, your personal life, things that are going on, and make sure that you, because in your 4th year or the final year, you have to do 720 hours. You have to do a research project, and you still have to obviously go to your accredited internship sites. And I was privileged as well because I got to work at a children's place of safety, which is what I really wanted to do. And it was an amazing experience, but it was difficult. And I think often the journey towards what you're passionate about, obsessed with, is never easy. It is always going to have bumps and turns and avenues that you don't want to. And like I say, after my 4 years of completing this qualification, I didn't want to counsel afterwards. So I was just very over it at that stage. But it's yeah, so that was my experience at the B-Psych, and definitely something I wouldn't take away from it. But yeah, it was it did make me want to change a little bit of how I viewed the role as well, because it was always I needed to be a psychologist in order to make an impact, and that actually isn't the case. So for those who are thinking about it, a B-Psych equivalent is probably one of the best solutions to this. So it is a professional capping program. I think the word capping is very important because you might have undergrad or be an honor student and have done this process and feel like, okay, well, I can just do the 720 hours and register with the HPCSA, and that's not the case. It is the final year or 4th year is where you, or the 18-month professional part of the program, is where you get a lot of training and supervision on how to conduct yourself in a professional manner. And it's something that cannot be and just dismissed as something that you can do without the 720 practical hours. That's all you need. It is looking at the scope. So the B-Psych equivalent program is offered at a limited amount of institutions, and it is something that is very difficult to get into, like a master's degree. And I don't think when viewing your B-Psych equivalent application to view it as a consolation prize not getting into masters. It should be something that you feel very passionate about and working towards really being innovative and really making your mark in psychology. Okay, so yeah, this is just some notes that I wanted to emphasize with you guys with regards to it. So psych honor students may not just complete the 720 hours. The focus is practical training so that you are very ethical. So one of the very key components is that you don't want to be in a situation where you are facing an ethical dilemma, being a newly graduated student and unsure what to do. The 720 hours are supervised by a psychological professional, whether it be a registered psychologist or a registered counselor, and they will be able to guide you throughout that process so that you are able to understand your boundaries, understand the ethics around it, because you think you know most of the ethical situations that come out of counseling. You studied psych, you understand it, and yes, for a fair amount you probably do, but there's a lot of nuances and things that come up that we can't really predict to happen, and it's only in those situations. So that's why it's very important. So in order to be a registered counselor, you first have to hold a registration as a student registered counselor. If you are currently enrolled in the B-Psych equivalent programs through UNISA, I know that UNISA has one, but also SACAP and Cornerstone are the primary ones that do offer that. So yeah, that is how to get into the BPsych. And just speaking on this, there are some drawbacks that I feel comes with being an RC, and often it is that people don't know the role. And that falls a lot onto the registered counselors themselves. We don't often talk about being a registered counselor or the day-to-day life of a registered counselor. That's why I like to do these talks and talk to psych students or students in general about being a registered counselor, so you understand that it's not just something that is passing, or I'll do this while I apply for masters. It's okay if you do, that's also amazing. We need psychologists, but being a registered counselor is such an important role, and you have so much impact. So like I said, you can work in so many fields. You can, and I'm just going to speak about private practice now. So with private practice, you can open up your own company and offer counseling services to the public. You are allowed to claim from majority of the medical aids, and you are able to, with the BHF, which is another subsidiary regulator. I think that's the best word to describe them. It allows you to register and have private practice, and you'll get a private practice number, which is different to your HPCSA practice number, and you're able to run your own company, which is very different, and it's something that needs a lot of work and effort. But if you have that entrepreneurial ideas and spirit in mind, and you really feel that's something you can do, of course, and it doesn't. I also, like I said, psychology is a journey, and you might have, at this point, on this chat, you might be like, I want to be a clinical psychologist, but the road that you take might stop you off at being a registered counselor. You might take a few years being a registered counselor. You might then find you're better suited for counseling psychology, and it's about learning about yourself, understanding where you're best suited, and not letting the ideas of others really influence you. Often we are living, I had a friend who recently said this, and I thought it was quite entertaining. We always think of like Grey's Anatomy and wanting to be in that kind of setting, which is also great. And I have friends who do that, not love the adrenaline, love to be, in the emergency room and so forth. And it's beautiful that they're able to handle that. It's just, it's okay if that's also not for you. It's okay if you want to have, work in an education setting or work in an NGO, work in policy development. It's such a broad category where you can really see what really suits you. Okay, and then, before I even go into this, if you guys have any answers and questions, there's Cognition & Co, where all this information is on. It's a wonderful website if you are thinking about being a professional in psychology. It's got wonderful insight on master's applications, but also being a registered counselor, being a psychometrist, something we don't often talk about. And if you are interested, I actually have a podcast episode on being a registered counselor and my journey towards it. So a bit of a longer version of what I've been talking to you guys without a little, interruptions that we've had technical difficulties. So if you guys are interested, you can just type in Cognition & Co, and it'll come up with the podcast that's on Spotify as well. And like I said, it's a lovely resource where it has all this information that I've talked about as well. And it just gives you a broader, insight on the journey and the struggles that didn't just fit into my 20 minutes talk. Okay, thank you guys. If you have any questions, I am going to stay on for a bit and have no issues answering. I will also pop my email if you do want to, if you want to share anything, they'll let me know. Thank you.
I'm also one of those students who's been interested in doing psychological counseling. because I've been to a psychological counselor and I know that they do counsel and they are registered with the PHF because I'm on medical aid, so they were able to give me a claim back from medical aid. However, I've heard other students who've done honors saying if you've got honors, you only just become a lay counselor. You can't be like a professional counselor. So that got me worried. And also when I was going through my study material this year, because I'm doing my honors in psychological counseling, there was something where it was written that with the UNISA honors, you cannot register with HPCSA. So I was a bit concerned because I thought that with my honors, I'll be able to register with the HPCSA and practice as a registered counselor. So I know you've given some names, but I didn't hear clearly what the names of those colleges. So how do one go about now becoming a registered counselor after obtaining a UNISA honors? What else can one do in order to get into psychological counseling?
Okay, so I think the best would be to do the B-Psych equivalent, and it's an 18-month program, or as they prefer to call it, like a professional capping qualification that you can get at SACAP is one of the institutions. Cornerstone, I think, if I'm not mistaken, also UKZN offers it as well. But yeah, like I mentioned, you can also look at the Cognition & Co website where they have the application dates for the qualifications as well, for the psych equivalents. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So our next speaker will be Dr. Rajab, who will be talking about becoming a psychometrist. Before she comes on, I would just like to introduce her quickly. So Dr. Rajab is a research psychologist and a psychometrist interested in executive functioning across the lifespan, academic and employee performance, and psychometric assessment development and evaluation. She joined a JVR Africa group in 2016 and is currently a senior researcher in the product and research team. She's passionate about making psychology relatable and practically meaning for all of us. Dr. Rajab serves as an executive council member for the Psychological Society of South Africa and their research and methodologies, and registered counselor and a psychometry division. She is also a 2024 International Test Commission's early career scholar.
I'll be speaking about psychometry today. I think it's so nice that I'm following straight on from Savannah, because the registered counselor and the psychometry programs, yes, like Savannah said, people unfortunately believe that's a consolation prize, and it's absolutely not. I think both of those parts have so much value, and you can get so much, if you're passionate about it, you can get so much interest and fulfillment out of going the psychometry route. You can see that I'm dual registered, but I practice psychometry even more than I do my research psychology work. I think similar to Savannah, maybe not. I've probably been with JVR longer than Savannah has been with her company, but a little bit very briefly, I am a UNISA alumni. I did my BA, what was it? Human Science and Social Science undergrad at UNISA. Then I did my honors also at UNISA in counseling psychology. After that, at UJ, I went and did my psychometry. Did my internship at JVR Psychometrics in 2016, and I am still there today in 2025. I took a gap year in 2017 to go do my master's in research psychology. Came back to JVR to do my research psychology internship, and have been with JVR in various capacities since then. I think as part of my psychometry internship, that 6-month waiting period while I was waiting for board results and the like, I was like a data capturer / receptionist. And yes, as you heard now, I'm leading the research team. But what does our team research? We are JVR Psychometrics after all. So I research psychometric assessments, and I really find that in my case, but so many other people's cases, the background of psychometry really helps me do my job as a research psychologist that much better as well. I think before, just one slide, 5 minutes or less, before I even go into what makes a good psychometrist, or what do you need to go down the path of psychometry. All of us on the call right now, I think, are current honors students or thereabouts, and already the registered counselors courses and the psychometry courses, yes, absolutely, they are not as competitive as getting to the master's courses. When I say that, it's not as if those courses aren't strenuous and then take a lot of energy. I mean, like a registered counselor, the psychometry course also includes a 720-hour practicum, but just if we look at the master's classes, they tend to take, depending on the university, 8 to 12, whereas if we're looking at the registered counselor and psychometry courses, sometimes those numbers can go up to like 40 to 50 people. So it's slightly easier to get into them. But with that said, it's still very competitive. You would know yourselves how many students, we're going into close to the thousands of current honors students are applying for those very limited registered counselor, psychometry and master's courses. And I think please don't feel disempowered by that, by the fact that you have a psychology degree, that you've gone beyond that you are now doing your honors as well, by the fact that you are holding a psychology degree. There are a number of careers you can go into, even if you are not doing a fully capped professional degree that would have you registering with the HPCSA as a psychological practitioner. There's a number there. But in the world that we are living in currently, in the AI space, there is so much. I mean, you have 4 years of people science knowledge behind you, and in the world of AI, there's so many jobs where we are looking at how us as people can interact better with technology. Technology is not coming to take anybody's jobs away. ChatGPT isn't going to replace any one person, but there's so many jobs. I think if you look here, things like data analysis, computer human interfacing, experimental designing, UX design, so user experience design, where people and people with our skills are so required. Even in other jobs that are not full on psychology, the interviewing skills that you've learned over time, understanding of various public policies and apps and guidelines, negotiation analysis, ergonomics, so what makes a person tick or stressed within certain environments, forensic analysis, various administration activities, of course, teaching, training, coaching, lecturing, change management, performance evaluation, the whole HR space. There is already, by the fact that you have an honors degree in psychology, a whole world that has opened up for you beyond the traditional HPCSA registration route. There is a course coming up from SAISA, Psychological Society of South Africa, that I will be facilitating next week, Thursday evening on the 8th of May. It is free for all, alternative career paths. If you don't get into registered counseling, psychometry, or a master's, alternative routes that you can take. So hoping to see some of you there. But for those of us who are interested to know what a psychometrist can do, that was what I was asked to present on. So what do we do? So like Savannah mentioned, Form 258 for our registered counsellors, our psychometrists have Form 94. Also freely available on the HPCSA website, where you can go read up on the framework for education, training, and how to register as a psychometrist, as well as what's in the scope of a psychometrist. But if you look at the overarching need, or what is it that a psychometrist should be doing, it's to make psychological assessment accessible in order to promote the psychological well-being of the diverse South African population. And again, I don't have a lot of time to go into this, but psychological assessment as a whole does not have a good history in South Africa. It was previously used because assessments were brought through long ago, long before any of us were born. But back in the 40s, during World War II, they had imported a number of assessments that they were using on white European populations, using that in South Africa. And that was kind of the base for different education. So that those Bantu Acts, where we found that at the time they found that, you know what, English-speaking whites were cognitively superior to everybody else. That was scientifically proven with psychological tests, and as such, psychometry doesn't always get a good rap. Where we are at the moment is a lot of research is being done on psychometrics. I think it's a beautiful profession to be in at the moment, because everybody who's in it is working actively at creating inclusive assessments and making sure that we don't repeat the horrors of apartheid. So really making it accessible, cheap enough, language friendly, socioeconomically friendly for our South African individuals. And if I then break that down, or if Form 94 breaks that down, that looks at the ethical text administration, scoring, interpretation, report writing, and feedback of psychological assessments. As a psychometrist, you can assess any psychological construct as long as it is not psychopathology. So things like personality disorders and your more projective testing, like those ink blot tests, those we leave for the clinical psychologist. But other than that, any psychological test can be used by a registered psychometrist. We also, more and more of us are focusing on the development and adaptation of psychological tests and procedures that measure our psychological functions in our South African population. So my emphasis, for example, is on either developing local assessments. They're far cheaper. If you have been looking at the dollar or the pound exchange rate, it's far cheaper to have our own local assessments. But in cases where we are importing assessments from international suppliers, before using them on local populations, ensuring that it does work in South Africa, so norming and validating it for the South African population. In addition to that, as psychometrists, we can also support in policy development in respect of psychological assessment. So I work for JVR Psychometrics. We are a assessment supplier and developer, but often we have clients, sometimes they're in the mining sector, sometimes in the banking sector, sometimes in the education sector, that ask us, okay, help us write our policies of how we will use assessments for selection of students, for selection of employees, for development initiatives within our organization. Contingency management, so like very similar to your registered counselors, knowing how to run your own practice, but also how to refer where necessary, how to run your own practice if you are opening up a private practice, and those types of activities are also part of it. But as a whole, you think psychometrists, you can think about the statistical development of a psychometric and everything that goes with psychometrics, from administration to feedback to report writing, building rapport with our clients, making sure that we are using assessments fit for practice, fit for our populations. So to register as a psychometrist, so I think most of us are honors students currently. Once you have completed your honors degree, then you can apply for the BPsych equivalent in psychometry at some universities, or the postgraduate diploma in applied psychometry. Other universities offer that. As long as in your honors degree, you had some sort of assessment module. So I think at UNISA, it was the Psych 4807 or something like that, the Introduction to Psychological Assessments. As long as you're passing that with at least a 65%, then the universities will consider your application should you want to become a psychometrist. Once you're then in the program, so this is our post-honors, if you get into the BPsych equivalent program, it's a 6-month course. You have contact sessions at the university and concurrently run with a 720-hour supervised practicum in psychometric practice. So you doing your internship while registered for this BPsych equivalent. 720 hours is 6 months. Your psychometric practice, it is preferred that you have a psychometrist who has been registered for at least 3 years as a supervisor, but it's also almost acceptable if you have an industrial psychologist serving as your supervisor as well. They tend to not like clinical or counseling supervisors. Once you've then completed the practicum and completed your coursework, you are then eligible to go and write your HPCSA board exam. To pass this board exam, you need 70%. So your board exam, again, through SAISA, I offer free board exam workshops. So please do follow SAISA. We offer a lot for free to help students through various career paths and to get you practicing and out there to help the world. But once you pass the board exam, you can then register as an independent psychometrist. You can then either go work for an organization or work privately. And once you then registered, every year you just need to show that you are remaining relevant. So getting your 30 CPD points per year. Again, lots of free resources that you can achieve or complete to get your points. But yes, that's pretty much the process where you are now and the few steps required to register then as a psychometrist. So where to apply? Of course, UNISA offers the postgraduate diploma in applied psychometry. It's a new offer. I think this is only the second year that UNISA is offering this course. But Nelson Mandela University, Stellenbosch University, and UJ also offer the psychometry courses. I've put up the contact details for those individuals, but you can also just go to the websites. All of them have web pages where you can read up more about the courses. I do believe I've sent my slides to the organizers as well, so hopefully you get it at the end of tomorrow. Right. Out of interest, I also lecture to the UJ psychometry group, and when I meet them for the first time, I ask them, okay, well, you're now sitting in the psychometry class, why? And this is just some of the motivation and the reasons for why people choose psychometry. As you can see there in big there in the middle, it's passion. It's wanting to use assessments to better our societies, our organizations, to really help people, to learn, to understand people better, to learn and grow for personal development. I must say, to really part of this passion for psychometry, you need to be, on the one hand, quite analytical. There is a huge statistical element to being a psychometrist, understanding reliability, understanding validity, understanding norming. But at the same time, there's also a huge agreeableness and compassionate component. And I think in all the fields of psychology, there is that balance between being a scientist and being a compassionate person who wants to make a difference. And I think that just makes us special compared to, no offense for everybody who likes the BComs and everything else. But those they tend to be, you don't need the people skills necessarily. Whereas us, we need the people skills, but we also need especially in psychometry, quite a bit of stats love as well. So very quickly, because I work at JVR and we do offer internships, so you can't contact me directly, but if you do get into one of the universities, currently we do have partnerships with both UNISA and UJ, that if you get into their course, they in turn contact JVR and say, you know what, can you give us a few slots for internships? And then you would tend to work with either my team in JVR Psychometrics, where we are researching and commercializing assessments, JVR consultants, who actually do the consulting and a lot of the feedbacks to your corporate companies, and JVR Academy, who actually support with the skills development. I'm slowly moving into the space where I also work with the IT team. So things like user experience and integrated reporting, we work in that space. And as part of my PhD, I had worked with the JVR for Youth team, which is actually the non-profit organization leg of the company, where we go into the underprivileged areas and support with that career guidance and subject choice guidance for our youths. So very, very quickly, I know I'm running out of time, but some of the things that we do in our company. So for example, I'm a psychometric researcher. Part of what I do is psychometric product development and managing those products, validating and adapting assessments, training. So I do a lot of these, both for students, but also training other professionals, applied research, so ROI studies, predictive validity studies, and I offer consulting service as well. I have colleagues who serve as consultants. They do a lot of assessment facilitation, assessment administration, supporting in the training, development, selection space. They also work with employee engagement and satisfaction, and a lot of climate and culture interventions, especially since we know engagement and burnout are huge issues in the country at the moment. Solutions architecture, this is a new space as we're moving into the technology, psychology integration, working on new ways of scoring, machine learning, developing new interactive reporting, data analytics, and that this is still a new job that is starting to appear more and more often. And then there's other career options with a psychometry degree that you can also go into, such as learning and development, client services, account management, more data analytics, more coaching. The coaching, you would need to be ICF accredited as well. But yes, there's more of that. I think we have time for one question, but please, here's my email address. Please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you.
My question is with regards to the role that psychometrists play with regards to the Road Accident Fund. Could you just briefly explain what psychometrists are and aren't allowed to do as part of the Road Accident Fund compared to maybe like a clinical neuropsychologist?
So normally your clinical and neuropsychs would actually refer the test administration to the psychometrist to actually complete the batteries with those individuals. So if we're looking at the Road Accident Fund, for example, most of those individuals would claim some sort of traumatic brain injury, and the psychometrist can administer those assessments. What a psychometrist cannot do is diagnose. So that is still where the clinical psych and the neuropsych would come in. Hope that helps.
Okay, so it has to be a referral from a clinical or neuropsychologist to a psychometrist for them to do the test.
Yes, the psychometrist can help with the administration, but we can't diagnose.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So my name is Tepiso Ndebele. I am a clinical psychologist currently serving my community all the way in the Sekhukhune district, Limpopo. So thank you so much to the organizers for the invite. Maybe a brief background as to how I got here. I started my undergraduate degree with the University of Limpopo, where I did their professional 4-year Bachelor of Psychology degree, which helped me navigate my way into becoming a registered counselor. However, I never got that far with registering as a registered counselor. Graduated in 2018, and 2019 I took a gap year and went to work for Anglo American, another different space where I was a community development coordinator by virtue of having done psychology. While I was busy with that work, I applied for the master's program, and ultimately I was able to get admission at the Sefako Makgatho Health Science University in Pretoria. So instead of going to write my BPsych board exam, I then registered for master's. So, however, for those who are wondering, it is possible to still continue writing your board exam and becoming a registered counselor should one wish to do so. I just chose not to do that as well. While I was busy doing my final year at the University of Limpopo, I took a chance and I registered for short courses with UNISA, where I was able to do a short qualification and becoming an employee wellness. So I did a short course certificate in employee wellness with UNISA as well, just to help me preempt the working space. So I did that as well, and right now I am registered. I mean, I'm practicing as a psychologist. I'm also a researcher, something that I really, really enjoy. And I just recently became a mom, so that's another complex role that I have partaken in. So in terms of becoming a psychologist, I think piggybacking on the presentation from our registered counselor as well as our psychometrist, I also took this beautiful diagram from Cognition & Co. So I also do recommend that students visit the website, visit the community or the network to get more thorough information as to how they can become that of which they want to become. Fine. But basically the diagram that I'm speaking of is an outline of how one, in terms of training, can become all the different categories. So it indicates in terms of those who did a BPsych degree or a BPsych equivalent and how they can move all the way towards the master's. So with myself, I did a 4-year professional BPsych degree, and what that did is it helped me navigate towards going straight to master's without having to do a separate or independent honors year. So that is different from when one does a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and something else, because then they would need to do an independent 1-year honors degree where they do their research amongst other things. So another thing about the BPsych program, I think as they mentioned, there is the component of the practicum that either can be 18 months or 6 months. With myself, I did the 6 months one, and from there I went on to register as a student clinical psychologist at SMU. Now, the path within the master's degree itself is different from one university to another. There are some universities that offer a 1-year coursework master's degree, and there are other universities such as SMU, such as UNISA, and I stand to be corrected, I think UCT as well, where they offer a 2-year coursework master's degree. What that means is for some university, they do 1 year of coursework and then 1 year of internship. And then from there, they will go on to do their master's, their community service. Whereas with the 2-year coursework, you do your 2 years coursework degree session of it, and then from there you do your internship. So instead of it being 2 years, it ends up being 3 years of registered coursework. So another important thing to note is that once you are within the master's program, the program has been changing. Previously, one was able to do their internship and their community service without having completed their research. But in recent years, there has been that change where you have to do your coursework. Once you pass your coursework, you will go on to do your internship. And for majority of us within the profession, research tends to lags behind, so we would take on the research with us to our internship year. So you are continuing with your internship while also navigating research. Now, the unfortunate part is that's where it ends to some extent in terms of continuing, in terms of an income, in terms of being able to practice, because once you are completed, you've completed your internship year. If you have not yet completed your research, it means you cannot write your board exam. And if you haven't written your board exam, you cannot continue on to register either as a community service clinical psychologist or an independent psychologist in terms of counseling, research, industrial, as well as educational. So it's important to try and complete your research within your coursework plus internship, because if you're continuing with your research well past your internship, unfortunately, that would mean you have to go back and be home and focus on the research. And for some people, that can be very daunting, particularly in terms of finances. Research is one aspect that tend to take time because it's not entirely up to you. You have your supervisors that are helping you navigate the program. So sometimes it might take time. So it's also important to think about the financial implications should your research lag behind. Now, what does a clinical psychologist do? So with clinical psychology, according to the HPCSA, they describe it as being a specialist within the field of mental health. And what that tends to mean is that in most cases, before a patient comes to you, they would have to have passed somewhere, either passed through a general practitioner or passed through a registered counselor or a psychometrist, meaning there is somebody who has provided primary health care to that patient before the patient even arrived to your office. So it means you are a second or a secondary level from a primary aspect of health. So what we do is we assess, we evaluate, and we provide the diagnosis of mental health care issues. And these range from mild to severe cases. So what that means is just we work with all, and when I say all, I mean all aspect of mental health. Of course, it's important as part of the ethics to also tap into our sense of competencies. What that means is, in as much as we are able to work with mild to severe mental health care issues, there are certain aspects of others where you know that this is not an area of your competence. For instance, if you are dealing with psycho-academic challenges, while you are able to work with them to provide the best care, it's also very important to refer to those who are specifically trained to work with those, for instance, referring to an educational psychologist. What we do are post assessing and evaluating and diagnosis, and then we would provide high intensity psychological intervention. So with high intensity, it means it's given the type of issues that we deal with. Usually high intensity issues would be your personality disorders, your complex post-traumatic manifestations, as well as the type of therapies that we provide are usually very long-term, hence the high intensity. We also are able to provide psychological assessment depending on the referral question. We are able to do assessments pertaining to psychopathology. We are able to do assessments pertaining to psychological development. and we are able to do some assessments pertaining to employee wellness or things that are needed in terms of the workplace. However, again, tapping into the ethical competency, if one feels that this is not an area that I am thoroughly trained on, we do also encourage aspect of referring either to a psychometrist or referring to an industrial psychologist who are trained more in depth in providing those type of assessments. Another, what we do is providing supervision. As a clinical psychologist, you would be able to provide supervision to other clinical psychologists, to registered counselors, as well as to psychiatrists. But as Dr. mentioned, sometimes the preference in terms of training with psychometrists, they would prefer an industrial person. And I think that is mainly because of their job is mainly on assessments. But with us, we do provide that supervision to registered counselors in terms of counseling, in terms of therapy, in terms of primary intervention that they are trained in. And another thing that we do is policy development. This includes serving in different boards, but the main thing is to assist whatever organization in terms of developing the policy that will also put mental health as an integral part of their services or their evaluations or whatever aspects of the work that they do within that particular company. So with clinical psychologists, by virtue of the name clinical psychologist, we are mainly stationed at hospitals or organizations that provide healthcare. So in most cases, from a South African context, that would be health facilities. However, we are able to provide consulting works for industrial companies where they would have an in-house employee wellness aspect and have either their registered counselor or their social worker or their employee wellness practitioner who does the primary intervention should they feel that the person needs extra or more intense work, then they would refer to us on the outside. And usually this happens if ever you are in private practice, where you are able to navigate consulting work, form relationships with such organizations to say, should you have people that you want to refer, I'm available to offer my services. Now, becoming a psychologist as a whole in South Africa is a very, very long journey. By virtue of the structures of our training, we don't have enough, or they don't take enough, in my opinion, in terms of training for one to become a psychologist. So within the primary aspects of it, with the undergraduate degrees, they take a very large number, and then towards masters they take a very small number. For instance, in my class we were 12. I know there are some universities that take as little as 6. So now it's important for one to try and channel that inner psychologist from the get-go. By means of, from the first day you register your degree in psychology, you need to channel your inner psychologist. It's important to maintain good average, because at the end the average will also determine whether you will qualify to continue on to do your masters. It's important to be proactive. One aspect that we have to unlearn right now is not asking for help. If ever you have to become comfortable with sending your lecturers that email. If you're not understanding something, don't stay with it for too long. Don't be scared to ask for help. Be more than just a student. It's important for you to try and put yourself in spaces where you are getting as much practical experience as possible. And practical experience, I don't just mean counseling experience per se, but experience working with people, because as a mental health care practitioner, you will be working with people, getting to know people's experiences and enhancing your curiosity about human behavior and why people do what they do, why we feel how we feel, and why we navigate life, how we navigate life. So that you get a lot more when you volunteer in spaces where you can help the community. One aspect of volunteering, a lot of students would say, where do I volunteer? If ever you have access to the campus, volunteering at any campus, if you are allowed, becoming a peer counselor, becoming a mentor, becoming a peer educator. If you don't have access to those, going to your nearest old age home, your nearest orphanage, going to your clinic, asking simply to assist. That way it helps. Another thing is utilize your Center for Student Counseling and Development if you have access to those. Attend therapy at your campuses if they offer them. I do know a lot of our students with UNISA are long distance. So also attending therapy at your local clinic, just simply being in a therapy room, so you can learn practically from that person what therapy looks like. Going there and say, I might not have things that I want to work with in terms of therapy, but I want to learn what therapy is, and I'm going to put myself in that position. That is another way of helping. Also, it gives you, or it enhances your empathy, knowing what it's like at the other end of the chair. Another thing that is important is, while you're navigating this journey, reflecting on where you are in terms of psychologically and emotionally. I know psychology as a profession can be emotionally taxing by virtue of the training. So checking in with yourself, checking in with your family where they are, and also kind of preparing your family that at the end of my 4-year degree or my 3-year degree, I still have a long more journey to continue with. So trying to navigate the pressures and financial aspects that might arise by not being able to get into a master's or not being able to automatically open your private practice at the end of your degree. So sometimes students indicate that what is more harmful is the pressures that come from families, where they're expecting that you went to school, you did your degree, you've graduated, why aren't you doing that of which we were expecting you to do, not knowing or not having been prepared that you still have a few more steps to continue. Now, tapping into, again, becoming a clinical psychologist, this one I'm just going to be very brief on, because we do offer, there are a number of people, including Cognitive & Co, who provide extensive workshopping on becoming a clinical psychologist. So this one is for those who are in their honors and are preparing for their masters. It's important to note that with your master's, you'll be expected to apply, and when you are applying, they're going to need you to write an autobiography, to write a motivation, as well as a CV. So prepare now. Even if you're in your 3rd year, you're in your honors and not applying, start now creating these things. Start now learning what an autobiography is. Start now how to differentiate in terms of your writing the autobiography as well as the motivation. And also start preparing for the financial obligations, because when you apply for masters, it can be costly. You first have to pay for the application fee, and should they invite you for selection week, you have to cover the cost of that traveling. So you might be from Limpopo and have applied in UCT, and they say, come, we want to see you for selection. So those financial obligations are very important. When you get to your selection week, depending on which university you'll be in, but do expect that there will be group work that will be expected from you. There will be a sense of role play that will be expected from you. A lot of students, particularly from UNISA, would say that I did all of this remotely. I don't know what a role play should look like. I always encourage students to utilize YouTube, get on YouTube and Google Carl Rogers client-centered or person-centered interview style. Just look at how that is done in practice, either with your family member, with your friends, with your colleagues, so you can prepare yourself of what will be expected from you in therapy, because those things things are very vital. How you sit, how you reflect, how you lean forward, you lean back, all those things form an integral part of the selection. There will be a written task that will be expected from you depending from which university. It will be based on research in most cases, but also a psychology exam it could be. And then there will be the panel interview as well as the individual interviews. So those are some of the things that you can expect in terms of your selection week. My parting ways is start now building that sense of confidence in yourself. If you were able to get into the degree, you are sure can be able to get into the master's program with guidance, of course, but the key thing is to build that self-confidence, because some people would have all the requirements, but selection week, it be the main challenge. Either they get too nervous, and when you are too nervous or too anxious, that can translate and maybe hinder you from being selected, whereas all the other boxes are ticked. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wish you guys all the best in your journey towards psychology, and I cannot wait to welcome you into the profession of clinical psychology.
I wanted to ask, is it possible after studying my bachelor degree that I study further to masters, to honors, masters, and doctoral qualification as a social worker?
You're asking if ever as a social worker, are you able to continue with your honors through social work and come into the psychology discipline?
No, my question is, okay, right now I'm studying my bachelor degree, my 4-year bachelor degree. So my question is, after studying my 4-year bachelor degree, is it possible that I study like further to master's, doctoral, and honors, masters, and doctoral degree qualification?
Okay, so if you're doing your 4-year degree in social work,
in psychology.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's possible, but if you're doing your 4-year degree in psychology, you will not be expected to do a separate honors qualification. So from that 4-year degree, when you are done, you can go straight into applying for the master's program. So there wouldn't be a need for that extra 1 year of honors. That one is only expected for people who did a 3-year psychology degree. So yes, it is possible. And in terms of doctoral, that is up to you. If you want to continue doing your PhD or Doctor of Psych after that, that would be entirely up to you. But from 4-year degree, you can get into your master's, and then when you're done with your master's, start practicing.
Thank you.
We'll then be moving on to our fourth speaker, Ms. Nqobile Mnisi. Before I call her up, I'd like to just introduce her quickly. She is a social scientist with a BA in psychology and linguistics, an honors in psychology and a master's in social and psychological research, all from Wits University. She is currently pursuing her PhD in pediatrics at Wits and works as a research consultant at a research unit under Wits Health. Nqobile is also the founder of Phapano, The Difference, a psychology-focused youth initiative that supports aspiring psychologists through mentorship and information sharing. She enjoys working with young people like herself to create spaces where they can grow and pursue their goals with confidence.
I am William Nisi, and I will be presenting on research psychology. And just to give you a brief overview of who I am, I started my journey in psychology in 2019 when I did my undergrad degree. I majored in linguistics and psychology at Wits, and then I went on to do my honors, also in psychology at Wits the following year. And then in 2023, I did my master's in social and psychological research, which really is just called research psychology, also at Wits. And then last year, I did my tailored internship at Ubele Educational and Psychotherapy Trust, which is actually an accredited site for educational and counseling psychologists, if you ever want to check it out. And then currently I am pursuing my PhD, and I'm working as a social scientist under the Wits Health Consortium. And just to warn you beforehand, this is going to be an information overload, but I did want this to be a standalone because research psychology is such a mysterious branch in psychology. So I did want to include as much information as I could to demystify research psychology. So bear with me. So just to start off, what is research psychology? So according to the HPCSA scope of practice, research psychology is the scientific study of human behavior with the focus on developing, applying, and evaluating psychological theory and methods to understand individuals and groups with their various contexts. So what you can get from this is that we are not therapy focused, so we don't do any therapy work. We only work with people through research, and we're trying to understand people only through research. We apply qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods, which are modules that you do throughout your studies. They are compulsory modules, so I'm sure we all know about them. And what we do is we shape policies, we inform systems, and we improve interventions as well. We are multidisciplinary. We can work across sectors. We can work in health. We can work in education. We can work in development. We can work in tech. Yeah, so just to give you an overview of the research approaches that I'm sure we all know about, I'll just go quickly through this. Like I mentioned, we have qualitative work, we have quantitative. Mixed methods is a new one, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of us don't know about it. But yeah, in qualitative, the questions that we're trying to answer are the why and the how. And we do this by exploring meaning and experience. We collect our data through interviews or focus groups, and we also analyze it using thematic analysis. And then for quantitative, what we're trying to do is we're trying to measure variables, and we're trying to test relationships as well. And how we collect our data is through surveys or numerical data. And the questions we're trying to answer are how many or what is the relationship between certain variables. And the stats that we use, the software that we use is the dreaded is PSS and R as well. And then for mixed methods, it's obviously a combination of the two. We're combining both methods to get a full picture, and we use both the interviews and the surveys. And what we're trying to answer is both the depth and the breadth question. And obviously, we analyze it using both thematic and stats as well. And yeah, how do you know if research psychology is for you? Because this is the question I get quite a lot, actually, of how I ended up in research psychology and not the other streams. So how would you know is that you're genuinely curious about why people, communities, or systems behave the way that they do. You enjoy asking questions and finding evidence-based answers. You're comfortable with both numbers and stories, or you're at least willing to learn, because you do learn as you go, and you prefer working behind the scenes to influence change through research, policy, and programs. So if you're someone like me, you're shy, you don't want to be in the spotlight, this is the perfect place for you to be. And you also enjoy writing, analyzing, and problem solving. You're also interested in bigger societal impacts. You're interested in improving health, education, tech, and communities. You value critical thinking, adaptability, and ethical decision-making. You're passionate about using knowledge to make systems better and not just helping individuals one-on-one. Yeah, so not all institutions in South Africa actually offer accredited research psychology programs. It's only these ones that offer accredited ones, which is the University of Pretoria. They offer the MA in research psychology, University of which is where I did my master's in social and psychological research. We have UWC, which also offers MA in psychology, the structured program, and we have Northwest University, which has the MHS research psychology, and lastly, the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So what this means when I say accredited program, it means that it does lead to registration as a research psychologist, which then obviously means that you're accredited by the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And to become a research psychologist under the Health Professions Council of South Africa, you obviously need your accredited master's degree from the universities I just mentioned. You need to do a structured 1-year research internship, and then after internship, you write your 1-year board exam, which you must pass with a minimum of 70%. And then after that, you can be registered as a research psychologist, and you can use the profession title under the HPCSA legally. And also you can work in very formal roles in health, public policy, and international organizations. And the other universities that do also offer research psychology, but just not the HPCSA accredited one, are UNISA. Obviously, they have the MA in psychology. There's Rhodes University, there's Stellenbosch University, there's the University of Cape Town, there's the University of Johannesburg, the University of Fort Hare, and the University of Limpopo. So what I mean when I say they are not accredited, it means it does not lead to registration. It does not lead to HPCSA registration, and that you won't be required to do a formal internship after that, and you don't need to write board exams. And like I said, you don't register with the HPCSA, but you're not limited. You can still work as a researcher, you can still work as an M&E officer, you can work as a policy analyst, you can work as a market researcher, you can work as a social impacts consultant, you can work as a research manager in donor-funded programs. And yeah, I think you can see that the skills are quite transferable. So these are some of the skills that you will develop through during your 1-year master's. Well, at Wits, it was a 1-year program, full-time. You'll develop critical thinking and problem solving. You'll be able to understand and apply psychological theory. You'll be able to write research proposals and ethical applications. You'll be able to design studies and formulate research questions, conduct literature reviews. You'll be able to do your own interviews, your surveys, and just collecting data in general, transcribing and coding the data, using software like SPSS, R, NVivo, or Atlas TI. You'll be able to write academic papers, reports, pieces, etc. And you'll be able to also present those findings and manage deadlines, which are very transferable skills that you need, I think, in any career that you can go into. And I think you can already tell by now that research psychology is quite multidisciplinary. So we're not just limited to psychology, unlike the other streams of psychology. It connects us with real-world issues across health, education, technology, and policy. Some of the people you can work with are doctors, you can work with teachers, engineers, public health officials, designers, and government leaders. And your research skills help you solve problems in also public health, education reform, UX experience, like Dr. mentioned earlier, social justice, economics, and developments. And you're also trained to move between fields. So wherever people, behavior, and systems intersect, you have a role. So research psychologists, what we do is we build the bridge between disciplines to find better solutions. And just to show you that we're not limited in any way. And it doesn't matter which research psychology stream you choose to pursue, whether it's accredited or it's not accredited, you have a lot of options to choose from, which is what I like about research psychology. So you can work in academia and research institutions as a researcher, lecturer, or an academic writer. You can work in health and social sciences. You should have access to this, so you'll be able to see all of these things. You'll also be able to work with NGOs, you'll be able to work in market research, in the tech sector, in the banks and financial institutions, in government departments, in embassies and diplomacy offices, in donor organizations, in civil society and advocacy organizations, in private sector corporates, and you can also go into independent consulting and freelance research. And just to give you an example of the space that I'm in currently. So because I am pursuing my PhD full-time, I didn't want to work full-time. So I am working as an independent consultant under the Wits Health Consortium. And the nice part about working as a consultant is that you can work with a lot of institutions. So I am working within clinical research because that's the work that we do under the Wits Health Consortium. And I'm also working with another organization which does market research. So the nice thing is that you're not limited with your career options. If you don't want to do it full-time, or I don't want to say commit to one thing, but like for me, I want to commit to my studies right now. So I do want a flexible job. So the nice thing is that I can work in different areas because the skills that you do learn during your master's are very transferable. If you do a master's in research psychology, trust me, you'll be able to thrive in any of these organizations and institutions because the skills are that transferable. And then, yeah, just practical ways on how to build a career in research. I included this because I feel like research psychology is not very straightforward. So your career really is what you make of it in research psychology. You have to be very intentional about building your career. It's not a straightforward, I'm going to do my honors, I'm going to do my master's, and you know that you have the internship. After that, you have community service for CLIN, and then you can apply to work as a clinical psychologist at a hospital or private practice. For us, we have to actually sit down and decide what for ourselves and where we see ourselves in 5 years' time. So yeah, just a few points that I put together. Obviously, I'm still very new in the field. I'm still very inexperienced. So this is my experience so far. So what has worked for me so far is branding myself very clearly, right? So I use LinkedIn as my main platform for my career. So what I do is I highlight my skills in research psychology. So I don't just say that I studied research psychology. You have to know what your niche is, right? Whether it's health, education, policy, or anything else. And I think it's important to note that these things do change as time goes. You're not forced to commit to one thing. Like for instance, for me, last year I was working in early childhood development research, but this year I'm working in clinical research. So you're able to change and to decide what works for you and what you enjoy doing. Last year, I discovered that as much as I love children, I love working with children, and I love ECD, I don't like it in theory. So that's why I decided to change and do something that I would actually enjoy in theory. And that's why I'm in the clinical research space right now. And like I mentioned, I use LinkedIn, leverage on it, because that's where people will find you. So share your work, share your passions, share your goals, and yeah, just be very intentional and network with people in the industries that you want to enter. And obviously, how the APCSA has the CPD points that you have to do all the time. You can also upskill, whether or not you're registered with the HPCSA. You can upskill by doing free courses or short online courses, whether it's in M&E, which is monitoring and evaluation, in qualitative research, data analysis, behavioral insights. I think there's a lot of these academies that offer it on LinkedIn, I think it's called Coursera as well. There's quite a few of them. I think if you just search for online courses, you can find research online courses, and they are free ones, and obviously also paid as well. And also keep reading on international developments, reports, policy briefs, and research papers. And like I said, you need to be very clear about your story. Show employers how your degree solves problems that they care about. And you must also focus on the value that you bring and not what you lack. Like I said, registration is not going to limit you in any way. So don't think it's going to be a disadvantage for you that you're not registered. And just to continue on how to build your career in research, your personal brand, right, should attract the right people, whether you're trying to attract mentors, you're trying to attract recruiters, you're trying to attract funders or collaborators, right? You need to think about who you want to notice you, whether it's universities as well, or NGOs or professionals in your field. Tailor your LinkedIn. I keep saying LinkedIn, and I keep mentioning LinkedIn because it's been so important in my career so far. So that's why I keep on mentioning LinkedIn. And just tailoring your LinkedIn content, your profile, and your presence to reflect what they're looking for. Because when your message is clear, the right people will definitely find you. And then the next few slides are just a practical example of my LinkedIn profile, of how I used my LinkedIn to leverage on the opportunities and the spaces that I'm in right now, right? So this is what my profile looks like. Currently, I'm very clear about the qualifications that I have. And in my, I forgot what the small section is called, but I do mention that I did research psychology and that I'm purpose-driven, people-centered, and I'm an advocate for representation, right? And In my bio also, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I also mentioned that I hold a master's degree in social and psychological research, which deepened my understanding of how people move through the world and how systems often shape, limit, or enable that movement. Now, as I pursue my PhD, I continue to approach research as a tool for reflection, clarity, and positive change. And then I also speak about my interests. So I'm particularly interested in how access, representation, and inclusion shape people's experiences and how small shifts in information opportunity can make a big difference. So my work is grounded deeply in deep curiosity about people, about systems, and the subtle barriers that often go unnoticed. Obviously, my LinkedIn looks very professional, but I do want to mention that I don't want people to think that I have everything figured out, and that's why I mentioned that I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but obviously what remains is my constant belief that research, when rooted in purpose, has the power to shift what's possible for others. So the nice thing with LinkedIn, you can also put your top skills, because when recruiters are looking for your profile on LinkedIn, they're able to see your skills. So for me as a researcher right now, I think these are my top skills, is that I'm very analytical, my interpersonal skills, my quantitative research, project management, and SPSS. I'm very comfortable with those. So LinkedIn does give you space to put your top skills so that when recruiters are looking for your profile on LinkedIn, they can see this quite easily. And yeah, these are some of the posts that I make on my profile, just to speak about the things that interest me, so people can see that, yeah, I am actually interested in research psychology, and it wasn't like the other speakers mentioned, it's a consolation prize, right? That this is actually where I want to be. I wasn't here by chance, I wasn't here by mistake. This is actually where I want to be. So yeah, post reflective posts. I posted this post recently after it was actually, I think, late last year, when I'd almost completed my internship. And I wrote about a personal experience about how growing up in a township, I saw firsthand how many voices go unheard, stories of resilience, of struggle and strength that deserve to be amplified. And I spoke about how the work that I was doing that year reminded me of why I love research, because it allows me to understand why people act the way that they do, to connect with their lived experiences, and to amplify the voices that are often silenced. So research has become my way of giving back, of creating change, and of honoring the communities and stories that shaped me. I know I may not be able to change policies or dismantle systems overnight, but through my work, I'm trying, and that's enough for me. This year, I've learned that impact doesn't always have to be grand to matter. Sometimes it's in the conversations we spark, the spaces we create, and the lives we touch, no matter how small. And I'm reading this because the next slide is going to show why this is so important, that you share your views. And you just share, yeah, anything that interests you in the space. I think LinkedIn is such a good place to share your thoughts. And then I also posted something about qualitative and quantitative research, which was a discovery I made last year, actually. I said, coming straight out of varsity, I felt like I could pick and choose whichever research methodology I wanted to specialize in. And naturally, I leaned towards quantitative research because I love numbers, and it felt reliable and conclusive. But then I realized that capturing people's experiences on a Likert type scale wasn't enough. People are complex, and numbers can only take you so far. I've often dreaded qualitative research because of its subjective nature, but I'm slowly starting to see its value in capturing the nuances that stats can miss. And in South Africa, where culturally relevant measures are often lacking, mixed methods are becoming more crucial. Whoever came up with mixed methods, thank you. I'm definitely catching the bug. So what is the biggest takeaway for me? As I find my feet and voice in the research space, I'm learning that it's not about one approach being better or easier than the other. It's about balance and understanding people in their complexity. And just, I included this, sorry, Mama Shri, for putting you on the spot, but I had posted this recently, I think a month or two ago, of what you can do with a master's in research psychology. And I just put all the opportunities that I've also included in this presentation of what you can do and how you're not limited, whether you go the accredited route or the non-accredited route. And this is just a screenshot of the message that I got that led me to being here today, actually. She saw my post and she felt like I was the right person to impart knowledge of the profession with you guys today. So yeah, that just goes to show how important branding yourself and positioning yourself on LinkedIn is. And the next slides as well is the opportunities. They will find you on LinkedIn if you position yourself, especially with research psychology, because it's not a one size fits all type of situation, right? So I got a message last year in November. Someone saw my post about the township and how growing up in the township is shaped and all of that. And she said, hello, loved your very meaningful research and reflection today. Do you do associate work? We listen the outlook for good associates. Just by seeing the type of contents that I was posting on my LinkedIn, it caught her attention, obviously, and then she messaged me. And every time they do have a research project that they're working on, they're able to call me and just to contact me. I've never met these people. They're actually based in Cape Town and I'm in Joburg. So yeah, that's how positioning yourself can open doors for you. And then I also got a message late last in July from a Wits professor. She said, hi Mobile, huge congratulations. This was after I posted my graduation pictures from my master's degree. And she said to me, let me know if you'd be interested in meeting up to discuss potential opportunities. And I think this one is my favorite screenshot because this professor is currently my PhD supervisor and she's also my boss at Wits Health Consortium under the research units that I'm working under. So yeah, this just goes to show that research psychology, if you're able to position yourself and to use your voice, I know it's very intimidating. I'm a very shy person, but luckily online I can speak. I really don't mind. And we have AI. We can use AI. I think it's quite obvious that with some of my posts I do use AI. I think we all know that AI, ChatGPT is known for its dashes, but you can write your thoughts and ask ChatGPT to put it for you in a cohesive manner, and it will be able to do that for you. So you don't have to paint a perfect picture, or if you do want to paint a perfect picture, you have ChatGPT for that. You have AI that can fix your writing for you. You don't have to feel intimidated that you have nothing to offer, right? And I know some people are going to say they're still in undergrad or they're in honors, they have nothing to offer. I actually started my LinkedIn profile in my second year of university, and then I had nothing to offer, right? And the only thing I had, I think, under my name was that I was under Golden Key. And I put that and I started connecting with people in my fields. I have so many psychologists on my LinkedIn because I wasn't scared of connecting with them. If I see someone that I'm interested in and I see that the field that they're in, I would want to work in it one day, I add them on LinkedIn and I engage with the content. And that's how people are able to see you. You don't have to have 500 degrees. You don't have to have work experience because I have very little work experience. I've been in university all my life, right? And the only work experience I had was my internship last year and what I'm doing currently this year. So I had nothing to offer, but I used the little knowledge and the little everyday experiences that I have to share that on the internet, and that has opened doors for me, right? So I think what I want you to take from this is that research psychology is not a consolation prize, right? It's a very valid, it's very powerful, and it's a very impactful career path. And like I said, it's not a plan B. It does offer real opportunities across industries and across countries. And also, it's important that I remind you again that whether your master's is accredited or not, your skills are very valuable and they're needed. And the fact that research psychology is multidisciplinary, that's what they train you to do during your master's. So you're able to work with in the health sector and the education sector, like I mentioned before. And your biggest assets really are your curiosity, your critical thinking, and the passion you have. Those are your greatest assets that will work for you. You need to just be a curious person. You don't have to have anything figured out because, like I said, research psychology really is what you make out of it. We are all still trying to figure it out ourselves. So yeah, you don't have to paint a perfect picture at any point. And I also mentioned that your journey may not look traditional, and that's perfectly okay. I heard a lot of the speakers saying that they also prefer the research space. So it's fine if you pursue other psychology streams, but you realize that no, actually research is where I want to be. It's always there. It's always there. And I think in any work that you do, there is always a research aspect to it. So I think it is a nice degree to have, or even if you just do the short courses or the online courses, I think it is nice to do and it's nice to have because it opens so many doors for you. And just for additional resources, I did host a workshop recently under my organization, Papano. You can just go on our websites. We did have a workshop on research psychology, just so you can have a holistic picture of people in the profession. So we did have Spesi Tlekwabe, who's a qualified research psychologist who's working in the research psychology space. And we had an M1 research psychology students as well, just to take you through the process from their point of view and just to show you how diverse and how, because we all had different stories of how we ended up where we are and all the opportunities that present themselves in the space. So if you're interested to hear what they had to say, you can just visit our website and you can find the recording to this and the slideshow as well. And just to close off, I put this wonderful quote. If you've ever wondered, what can I do with a master's in research psychology? The answer is a lot more than you might think. Thank you so much. If you have any other questions, you can email me. That's my email address. And thank you.
I will now be calling up our fifth speaker, who is Miss Mapula, who is an educational psychologist.
I'm a newly qualified education psychologist. I just qualified in Feb this year, and it's been more than less than 2 months. But I've been in this role as an intern since last year. So I'll just share my journey. And since it's a very broad field, psychology as a whole is a broad field, educational psychology as well as a broad field, I am in a path to narrow down the broad knowledge that I have into finding my niche. I think most of the speakers spoke about finding your niche in the psychology field, and that's exactly where I am right now. My qualifications, I'm not going to read everything as a whole, but I have done my bachelor's degree at UNISA. I'm a UNISA alumni 3 times. I've done my PGCE and my honors at UNISA. And then I ventured into Masters in Educational Psychology at University of Johannesburg. I heard Sepiso, the clinical psychologist, mentioning the path route for educational psychology, for psychology actually, that it can be part-time, it can be 1 year. So mine was part-time 2 years. And other universities in educational psychology, they offer it full-time 1 year, such as VETS. That's the university that I'm sure that they offer Masters in Educational Psychology 1 year, and it's going to be full-time. So I did mine part-time, which was 2 years because I was a teacher at the time, and this one worked best for me. Completed my internship at Curro Midrand, my board exam, and then I'm currently still at Curro Midrand. I transitioned from being an intern to an educational psychologist full-time there. My application process for masters, I think it's better. I thought it was important for me to share the process that I had 3 years ago. First thing was being authentic. I was authentic in my application process, in writing down whatever that was needed. I stayed true to who I was. I shared my purpose and my passion at the time. Networking is very important. I think Nobil also spoke about it a lot, using LinkedIn. LinkedIn was one thing that helped me to get into masters, if I have to say. I actually went to LinkedIn. I searched people who were educational psychologists who specifically completed their masters at UJ, and I asked them questions in terms of what do they need from people who are applying for the masters. What are their systems? And I found that they actually focus on the Bronfenbrenner's system theory. And I aligned my application process through that bioecological theory system. So it was better for me to network at the time, because I even got an opportunity to find an education psychologist who was willing to have a meeting with me and share what should I say, what I should not say. So networking is very important as you're applying. Resilient mindset. As I shared my challenges in the application progress, I also told them how I overcame all of those. And that actually goes back to being authentic in your application. you are saying to them that I am human, I have flaws, but I'm aware of them. As I'm aware of them, this is how I overcome them. And the support structure was also one thing that stood out. I mentioned who supports me when things are not going well in my life, actually, because I'm married, I'm a mother of 4. So of course, as I navigate my personal life and my studies, there would be times where I would need support. So support structure was one thing that stood out. And as I got into the masters, this is what I found as well as lecturers were speaking, that to have a support structure in life is very important. So this is one of the things that actually gave me leverage to be able to get into the masters, mentioning that if I'm not able to do this, this is the person I rely on, or this is what I do to make things better. And then the willingness to learn and grow. I applied first time and I got in first time, which was something that I could use the word a highlight for me, because most people would apply into masters and they would say we applied 3 times or 4 times. I applied once and I got in. But at the time of my application, I thought, if I don't get in this year, I'm definitely going to take notes into what do they require from me next time when I apply. So I went with the mindset of saying I'm going to learn through this journey, and then I'm going to grow, and I'm going to come back and apply again and again. So we know that applying for masters in psychology as a whole, it's a daunting process, and it has all those implications of not having so many people getting in. In my group, we were 25, and we had 106 applications at the time, only for UJ actually. So it was a privilege for me to get in, but I went there knowing that I'm going to apply and I'm going to come back next year. So it's a journey. It's not something that you just tick off. It's a journey that you're going to be in, and you have to have that willingness to grow and to be resilient. What educational psychologists do according to HPCS actually. I'm not going to read the whole slide, but I'm going to mention the assessment part, which are the psychoeducational assessments, diagnosis, the formulation, the intervention in context. And I highlighted with a particular emphasis on child and young people. Educational psychologists work with children from foundation phase, from 3 years, from 0 actually to adolescence, but we actually also cover people across the lifespan, because if you see, we also intervene in families, we intervene in communities, we intervene in school systems. So we cater for people from prenatal stage, which is from pregnancy, from prenatal stage until the whole lifespan. So what we find most of the time, people misunderstanding that education psychologists are only for schools, are only for children, but that's actually not true. We actually do therapeutic interventions. Any intervention that we do, we support parents, we support across the lifespan. That's what I'm actually trying to tell you, that we support people across the lifespan. We administer psychoeducational assessment, consulting with schools and other professionals. We usually consult with psychiatrists, clinical psychologists. So important, if you're a psychologist, not only an education psychologist, if you're a psychologist, you have to have knowledge of other professions, because you're going to need them. There's the pediatricians, the medical doctors. So if there's a need for me to refer, I would know that this is a referral for a clinical psychologist or a pediatrician or a psychiatrist. Where can education psychologists make an impact? We usually work in schools, private and public, higher education and training, NGOs and community organization, hospitals and clinics. But most of the time, you'd find that there's a stigma around us that we can't work in hospitals and clinics, but that's actually also not true. We can still be in hospitals and clinics because we work with trauma, we work with long-term or short-term trauma. So we can still cater for hospitals and clinics, but as I said, it's a stigma that is around our profession, that we can't be in that space. Corporate and consulting, research and policy. You find most education psychologists in higher education and training most of the time. in private practice, a lot of them as well. In schools, yes, they're there, but not as much. Most of them always align themselves in private practices. Challenges faced by educational psychologists is the balancing the roles, juggling all the roles that you have, because our work is very diverse. We do counseling, we do collaboration, admin responsibilities as well. During my internship, this is what I found mostly daunting, the admin responsibilities and being expected to also do the counseling, do the therapy, do the assessment all in one. And it was a learning journey, of course. As an intern, you are there to learn. So the admin responsibility, it's a lot of admin, but you find a way to deal with them. You find a way to navigate around them, because the expectations as well rises a lot. The minute they hear that you're a psychologist, the expectation is very high, and they expect you to actually meet the needs that they want, irrespective of your availability or whatever you can do at the time. Misunderstanding of your roles. Those are the challenges. This is one of the challenges that I also picked up being an education psychologist, that as I'm in a school context, I'm speaking from that context specifically. Misunderstanding of roles. They will misunderstand that we have ethics, we have confidentiality roles, and the head of the school will expect you to say certain things that you cannot even say. So as psychologists, we are aware that we are governed by ethics more than the organizations that we work for. So as you are navigating the process of becoming a psychologist, these are the challenges you're going to find, that who do I oblige to? But we know that as psychologists, the ethics are more important than any other organization's rules. So I will go through, because I am a registered education psychologist with the HPCSA, I have to follow that rule, because if you don't do that, then you'll become in trouble with your profession or your registration. They will come for you. So it's very important to be reflective about that, be aware of that, and as you navigate this route, you know that HPCSA always take precedence. It is the first point of referral all the time. Each and every case that comes into my door, the first question I ask myself is, what are the ethics saying about this? Not what are the organization's rules, but rather what are the ethics saying? Rewards of being an education psychologist. Watching learners thrive after support. As I said, I'm speaking from a school context, helping families reconnect and communicate better, making long-term systematic impact in schools, contributing to social justice in education. What I found most rewarding was I have a role to play. I have a to-do list, if I should call it like that. And then I'm the one who just points what I'm going to do when. So I actually control my own calendar. That's the reward, because I know on Monday I'm going to do this, Tuesday this is what I do, and this. So I work around my own schedule. I tell the school that this is what I'm going to do. If I have to be a psychoeducational assessment, it's going to take 2 weeks for you guys to get it. I'm going to start with parents. I'm going to start with intake, and then their assessment, and then the feedback with the parents. So I am in control of my own schedule, which is the most nice part of it. And you are able to also to start your own private practice. This was said by one of the speakers, that I think it was the registered counselor who spoke more about the private practice. So the rewards as well is that I can still work in a school and still have my own private practice, where I know that these are the school demands. I can go to the school, and by 1 o'clock I'm out. I go to my private practice. As long as I'm able to meet the demands of the school, then I'm able to also cater for my own private practice. And a day in the life of an education psychologist, you have morning assessments. The psychoeducational assessments are mostly done in the morning. Parent-teacher consultations, therapy sessions, report writing, team meetings, and reflective and practice or supervision. So as much as you're qualified, you work in a multidisciplinary setting, you're able to sit down and have reflective practice. You sit down with either occupational therapist or another psychologist, And then you talk about these clients, of course, in a very confidential setting. We take note of confidentiality. Then you have supervision. So we call it just having someone, a sound board, you know, when you have a niche, when you have a curiosity that this is what's happening with my client, you have to sit down with somebody else with another perspective who's going to tell you that, oh, this is what you're seeing, but I'm actually seeing this. So supervision and reflective practice are something that is ongoing in this profession. Can never say I've made it and I'm able to do this on my own now. There are a lot of challenges that we find, and you need that supervision, even though it's not in a school setting. I don't have that in my school, but I have it outside. The network that I formed outside from the supervisors that I had to the groups that we have in education psychology, we can just post information there, respecting the confidentiality of the client, and they will tell you ideas that, you know, this is what I see with this client, or this is what I'm seeing, and this is how you can actually tackle this. So it is a profession where you are actually a lifelong learner, and you can never say I have arrived. Tips for aspiring education psychologists: be patient with the journey. It was a long journey for me to be here today because I was a teacher for more than 8 years, and then I ventured into education psychology. So it was a long journey, but I was patient in this journey. Build a strong support network. I can never emphasize the importance of network. As the last speaker has said, network is very important in our field because you rely on those people at times when you need them. Volunteering, gaining practical exposure early. This is actually the time, if you are in your bachelor's degree, in your honors degree, this is the time for you to volunteer and gain practical exposure into your fields. I was an assistant. I started by being a peer helper at UNISA here in Pretoria, at the counseling unit. So I was a peer helper, and then I became an assistant student counselor at UNISA as well. So those are the times when I actually gained the volunteering part of things. And with my application, I included all that, and that actually gives you more leverage to say that, you know what, you could be a candidate for this. Develop reflective and ethical thinking. It's very important to be ethical in our field, of course, and that's something that you're going to learn as you navigate the psychology route. Following your curiosity, following your niche, following your instincts, very important in this profession. Never stop learning. You never stop learning. As I said before, that we are life learners, and we depend on each other, and we depend on the world as it is changing. What we see today might not be what we see the next day. So we are lifelong learners. Thank you so much. This is my journey as an educational psychologist. As I've mentioned, that I'm still learning in this journey. I'm very new in this journey. I come from a board exam that was very daunting, but rewarding. Most importantly, it's the fact that everything that you do as a psychologist is rewarding at the end of the day. Thank you so much.
I'll be moving on to our sixth speaker, who is Ms. Dineo. I'll just quickly introduce her. She is a registered industrial psychologist with the Health Professions Council of South Africa and currently serves as a senior lecturer in the Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology at the University of South Africa. Prior to joining UNISA, she gained extensive experience across private sectors, government, and non-governmental organizations. Ms. Dineo's research interest spans a diversity range of areas, including green entrepreneurship, women in entrepreneurship, Black African studies, the green economy, environmental psychology, the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions, artificial intelligence, systems dynamics, and many more. She has published widely in the field of artificial intelligence, green economy, green entrepreneurships, and systems dynamics. Her teaching focus on environmental psychology, personal psychology, and organizational psychology, with a special emphasis on the diagnostic and dialogic approach to organizational development and change management.
Good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned, or the speaker had mentioned, I am Dr. Carol Dineo Diale. I'm just going to share with you a brief presentation about industrial and organizational psychology. Just a brief background about myself. I am Dr. Carol Dineo Diale, registered industrial psychologist with the HPCSA. I'm also a lecturer here at UNISA, the Department of Industrial and Organizational Psychology, specifically, again, within the College of Economic and Management Sciences. That is my email address. I will also just share it with you on the chat when we are finished. So just outline of the content, what I will be speaking about. I'll be talking about in what is industrial psychology, what are the fields or careers that you can follow, especially within the industrial and organizational psychology, a brief background or my journey that I followed, as well as also on the background or the academic background and education that you need specifically to qualify as an industrial psychologist. So what is industrial psychologist? I've seen that in most cases, we actually get confused with the typical human resource managers or the performance management specialist or training and development. Of course, yes, we can still do the work within those fields, but our field is more behavioral, more saying that we look at the human behavior within the organization. We look at employees, how they interact, how they actually devise principles that would actually help themselves as well as organizations. We also look at devising or formulating strategies in order for us to say that these strategies can remedy challenges from individual, the group, and the organizational perspectives. So basically, when you look at psychology or industrial and organizational psychology, of course, you can still shift around. You still need your master's, because I've been listening to the previous speakers. They've been talking about master's degree, your 12 months internships, as well as also the parts of board exam. The difference with the industrial and organizational psychology is that you don't have to wait for the master's level. You can still use your bachelor's degree. You can still use your honors degree. I'll just talk about it just now, but with some restrictions. So some of the fields and careers that you look at or you can focus on is that you look at the job analysis. The job analysis is that you devise the job specification, the descriptions, how you remedy somebody else's performance, and then ultimately also looking at the rewards and remuneration. Employee selection and recruitment, you attracting talent. I'm sure you've heard about war for talent, for instance. You also look at saying that if you are wanting a specific person for a specific job, what are the competencies that you have to look for in order to match that person with a specific environment? It's quite a lot of long list, but I will just summarize a brief background about it, or brief careers within the field. So in terms of the training and development or performance appraisal, for instance, we look at, you can still also become a human resource management. Remember, again, as I had mentioned, you can either be a specialist, which is using your bachelor's degree or honors before you can actually reach to your master's level. You can look for graduate programs if you are third-year students, for instance. You can even look for a similar occupations that may actually be relevant or applicable to the fields that I'm projecting. The career guidance would be, as we are doing right now, you guiding a person in a specific environment, choosing them to either become an employee or an interpreter, for instance, giving them tests and assessments, but then that field would need a more specialized educational background. So basically you would need now your master's and your internship there, together with your psychological assessment. Organizational development, I'm sure some of you have also heard about it. An organizational development consultant, that is where you actually come up with those interventions that I alluded to. Take, for instance, maybe in a small office, employees are not talking to one another, for instance. They're not even sharing resources. They're not even having good relations with their managers, with their leaders. That's where you will come in as an industrial psychologist to assist. During the introductory video that I've watched as well, some of these fields were also mentioned, especially with the catalytic niche areas for the Industrial Revolution and the workplace diversity or equality and fairness, specifically on that Bossady theorization that as part of the video that we looked at in the beginning. That's again where you can contribute. So as a UNISA student or UNISA practitioner, you can or a student who actually studied at UNISA, you can still also use that background information, because also with the courses that we design, the courses that we actually give to students are also linked to catalytic niche areas. Apologies about the background noise. I'm in the office, so it's a corridor conversations. That's how free and at home we feel when we are in the office. And then environmental psychology. Not all organizations or institutions offer this course, but we as UNISA, we do have this environmental psychology. So where you look at the environment, the impact of the employee in the environment, for instance, and then you also have to come up with why do you, or interventions to minimize maybe or reducing the wastage of resources. Why do people pollute environment, for instance, and what can we look at in terms of assessments or interventions to come up with interventions within the environmental psychology. We also look at, or you can also focus on employee motivation and job satisfaction. As I had mentioned, it's quite a lot. The reward and remuneration, paying people fairly, equitably, and then also ensuring that they are within the proper bracket. I've skipped the economic side of it because I've seen or have heard previous speakers talk about it, but just I'm sure it has been a long program. But economics, you are actually saying that what makes a person perform in an environment. So if you're giving a person a chair and a table, is it in the right height or length, for instance? Are the resources that you give to employees enough or adequate to make them flourish within the organization? So just maybe the integration of my journey and the educational background that is needed in this field. Some of the things are a bit of repetition, as I had mentioned in the beginning. Yes, as an industrial psychologist, either you are an industrial psychologist, you are a clinical psychologist, you are an educational psychologist, for instance, you are maybe a neuropsychologist, you need your master's, you need your 12 months internship, and then you pass your board exam with 70%. What is different with this field of ours, industrial psychology, is that you can use your honors, your bachelor's degree, while you are still trying to qualify. For instance, with myself, I've been registered for a very long time now, but I don't think it has been that long. I've been registered as an industrial psychologist from 2017, but you can still say that after your degree, you look for an opportunity, you look for the internships or the graduate programs or the NGO opportunities or community engagement opportunities just to gain that experience. You can either search or use the list that I have given you previously on the previous slide and put specialist at the end. So the career junction, the career net, maybe PNet, for instance, and or LinkedIn, for instance, any other career portals that you can think of. So with industrial psychology, you can still also pursue a psychometric route, but it will be a supervised program. What that means is that you can still assess, but you cannot write the reports on your own. You would need someone, an industrial psychologist with master's, with 12 months internship, and with 70% pass of board exam to work under so that they can guide you. So the organizations that you can look at, that you can target, it's either learning institutions, academic environment, private sectors, your own practice, and NGO. So you remember I've also alluded to the fact that you don't have to wait for your master's. For instance, with myself, after my bachelor's degree, I actually was working for a manufacturing organization, a big car manufacturing, Mercedes-Benz. I can mention that. There's no privacy about that. You can still target other manufacturing organizations, private sectors, for instance. I've also worked for NGOs and community engagements to gain experience, child welfare training, for instance. And then after my honors, I worked for a local government. Hence I was saying that, yes, the ultimate goal was to get to the master's level, but I know that I'm from a background where after your degree, you're expected to work. They will ask yourself now, are you going to graduate 3 times before you can actually work? So to avoid that, and also ensuring that I'm more marketable, then I actually shift around. But you can also do that. You can either maybe set up your own practice, but that would actually start flourishing and be more visible, starting from your honors, or even your master's. Your degree, you can help someone in their own private practice and then still come up with the interventions from your 3rd year already, because there are organizational development tactics that we look at in our curriculum. Almost all universities, they offer that. UNISA also just got accredited again in terms of their master's, in terms of their professional course. So they haven't really failed, or we haven't really failed in terms of getting that accreditation with HPCSA. Sometimes you might actually say, okay, maybe I want to look at more of human resource management. There's nothing wrong with that. You can still also pursue that as you are continuing through the process. And lastly, the NGO. In closing, the country is in need of more industrial psychologists. If I could do it, so can you. Thank you so much for listening.
My question is, if only you want to have longevity and just, I guess, succeed in your career as an industrial psychologist, am I supposed to have both an honors and a master's degree?
Yes, so if I gather correctly, if you want to have that title and no restrictions, where you could do assessments, where you could do career guidance, you would definitely need your honors and your masters and do your 12 months internship. What is also flexible and nice about the program is that if you don't get an internship, because an internship can also be a challenge, or getting an internship can be a challenge, so you can still have an unstructured program. What that means is that you draft your own program, you send it to HPCSA for approval, and you get any industrial psychologist to work under. So maybe let's say you ask myself or other colleagues to say that, okay, do you have time this year? I've got this program, it has been approved. Can you sit with me as I'm helping through different organizations or various organizations? Then you can do that.
So if you followed a route of BA psychology and done your honors, what is the possibility, and not done your BCom in industrial psych, what is the possibility of applying for masters in industrial psych?
Okay, so with that one, they would credit you with some of the modules, because these programs, as much as they are similar or the same at master's level, but you would need some prerequisite from undergrad and honors. So you will get a credit in some of the modules, but then you would be expected to do others. So for instance, clinical psychologists, they don't have career psychology, you will have to do it. Clinical counseling or neuropsychologists, they don't have organizational development, you would need to do that. At least with the assessments now, they might say, okay, what type of assessments did you do in your undergrad? And then have to do now assessments within organizations. Then you can continue with the rest of the courses or the modules. Some of the universities are strict. They would say, please start over, because now there's quite a lot of difference that you need.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, I'm currently majoring in industrial psychology, but should I maybe want to change and maybe focus on research psychology? How would I go about that? Like, do I have to start all over again, or do I, maybe is there a way I can maybe add in certain modules that can still qualify me for that?
I think with research psych, as long as you have research modules in your undergrad and honors, and I think it's compulsory at every university that you have a research module. So I think you should be fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll now be moving on to our last speaker for the day, which is Ms. Nthabiseng, who is a clinical psychologist. Ms. Nthabiseng is a registered counseling psychologist with master's in clinical psychology from the University of Pretoria. She acquired her BA degree at the University of Western Cape and her honors at the Medical University of South Africa. She then did a business counseling certificate with JICA in Japan in 1999. Nthabiseng has a 29-year experience in broad spectrum of psychological services, including marital and relationship counseling, career counseling, bereavement counseling, life ministry across, and coaching in all important areas, namely emotional, mental, spiritual, social, physical, financial, relation, and career. She also deals with work-life balance coaching, workplace wellness, emotional intelligence, self-love, self-esteem, relating with others, and resilience. Mental wellness, for example, decision-making, conflict resolution, and problem-solving. She also works with psychoeducational talks and sermons, and has special interest in divorce recovery and financial wellness.
As per the introduction, my name is Nthabiseng Mweketsi. I'm a counseling psychologist working at the University of Pretoria at the moment, and I started my career way before some of you were born, in the 90s, and I opened my practice in 2003. So I've been in the field for almost 30 years now. It's been a while. I'm almost about to retire. Yes. Okay, counseling psychology. What is the academic journey for being a counseling psychologist? Like all the speakers have said before me, you need to have a master's degree. And with myself, I had a junior degree, but majoring in psychology, and then went into my honors degree. Then after my honors, I went into my master's degree. However, the journey through different levels is also determined by the university that you apply into and the degree that you do first. For instance, if you're doing a 3-year degree, obviously you'll have to do an honors. But if you're doing your 4-year degree, then you can go straight into master's. But it's not just like you go into your honors and go into master's. You have to apply and go for an interview where the university have its own do's and don'ts and T's and C's. Maybe you will be accepted at UJ but be rejected at Wits. Don't take it too hard. It happens to the most of us, but yes, it will happen like that. So each university has its own discretion that they use to accept individuals into their master's degree for counseling. Mostly they take about 8 to 12 students, predominantly because you have to do practicals in organizations. And if you do practicals, you find that some institutions can only accommodate 2 students per year or 3. So universities don't want to carry a lot of trouble in trying to find a place for you to do your practicals during your first year. But you need to have a place once you accepted that we will have University of Pretoria students coming in for certain practicals. And because during the first year of your master's, you still go out there and do practicals under the supervision of a qualified counseling psychologist. So they have to go in line with that. But after the first year theory part of it, you are expected to do your internship, generally with most universities, except for UNISA, I don't know which one as well, where you do your master's for 3 years, but mostly it's 2 years with the first one as the theory part and the second part as an internship. Then you must do your mini thesis, and after submitting your mini thesis, you write a board exam, and after the board exam, you can work as a psychologist, but after registering with the HPCSA. And if you want to work independent, you also have to register with the BHF, which is the Board for Healthcare Funders. That gives you a practice number that you can use to claim from medical aids as you see your clients. And then you also is recommended that you join psychology associations that are out there like SAISA and all of this, so that you can keep yourself abreast with issues that are going around within the psychology field and within your field in particular, and also then decide where you want to work. Counseling psychology, for me, it was a very interesting journey because obviously in our time, psychology was not so popular, and a lot of people, particularly a lot of people in the Black community, were not keen on going for therapy, as people still believe that they can go for counseling with their mothers or the priests or some elders in the community, but never with a psychologist or a stranger. And so in the beginning, most of us had to break through a lot of boundaries, a lot of walls where someone will come and consult, but they ask you a lot of questions about yourself first before they actually open up about their problems. However, the reason I chose counseling psychology was because I didn't want to work in mental hospitals, which was common in those days. And secondly, I didn't want to work with extreme pathology. So I wanted to work with normal people that are going through life and having extraordinary problems. And I become their crutch as they are walking through the problems. And I also wanted to have freedom to work anywhere. Remember, in our days when you qualified, if you're a clinical psychologist, you're expected to work in a hospital setting, and I knew I can't deal with hospitals. So counseling psychology gave me the freedom to actually work anywhere from schools to private companies to public sector to anywhere else. But it gave me the freedom to work where I wanted. During your training, you are exposed to different theories and modalities that you can use while you practice. And that also give you structure in terms of dealing with your clients. For instance, you know that you can use Rogerian to actually get enough information to build rapport, to reflect and to ask open-ending questions, while when you go into deep issues of the client, you can maybe move into CBT, where you actually think about how the person thinks about their issues and how their thoughts affect their emotions, and ultimately how those emotions affect their actions. So you choose from different modalities, and those you get training on as you do your first year theory in Masters for Counseling Psychologists. And therefore, when you have the modalities, they actually help you to give you structure and to help you track the progress of the client and the progress that you're making with the client. For instance, if you found a client who is very anxious, through CBT, you can assist them to identify what is actually causing the anxiety by going through their thoughts. And as you teach them how to think differently, you can actually track your progress with the client. That I started with the client not knowing how to actually become aware of how they think and become aware of what their thoughts give them, but you are at the point where they can actually control their thoughts and therefore can be able to control their thinking and their behavior. As a counseling psychologist, you can work anywhere. There's an opportunity. There's a plus about it. You can be in consulting. You can work in an academic setting like I am doing now. You can work in a corporate environment. You can work in schools. You can be in private practice. Basically, you can work anywhere. I can actually even exaggerate it by saying you can even work from your car, but you can work from anywhere. Unfortunately, because we are also guided by ethics and HPCSA, you can't work from anywhere. But yes, you can actually literally see people from anywhere, because counseling psychology is about making people feel better about themselves and assisting them to become the best version of who they are and taking them through the journey to where they want to go. You are not diagnosing to label and to give them medication to keep them there. You actually help them to move from where they don't want to be to go to where they want to be. And imagine what kind of pleasure you find when you realize that you had a client who came to you without knowing where they want to be, but they know that where they are at this point is not where they want to be, and you assist them to move. What is the scope? With the scope of counseling psychologist, I was creative in my journey. I'll talk about my journey later, but I was creative in my journey in the sense that I went from point A to point Z. So basically I've been everywhere. And imagine the years that I've worked. I mean, I've been here for almost 30 years, so I've been everywhere. The only place I didn't go to will be where there are no people, because I always believe that for as long as I see people, I see potential clients. And every day in my life, I actually proved that people have something to share and people are always carrying something that they want to unpack with somebody. And if you are there at the right time, at the right place, you become that person. And while you're doing that in the process, you are making money. So yes, so the scope is that from doing occupational assessments, where you can do recruitment assessments, and from there you can do career-related assessments within organizations or within corporates. And then you can do psychological assessments within therapy that are projective. For instance, TATs, your thematic perception therapy. You can do all those assessments, and you can do counseling, you can do research, you can do psychoeducational programs, you can do workshops, you can do my favorite public speaking, you can do radio, you can do TV, you can do podcasts, you can do anything. So basically, as a counseling psychologist, the world is your oyster. The scope is endless. You can create your own workspace and you can create your own rules. What you need to ask is, what are the problems that people are going through at this point? And how do I give them the answer? And how do I assist them to get to the answer? That's all you do all the time. So keep your eyes open and keep your ears open and listen to people. And as you listen to people and you see what they do, you can be able to intervene at their level. Believe me, I've been there. I'll tell you how. Next slide, please. The intention. I started with my intention. What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve as a psychologist? And that's why I chose counseling. Because in our times, I realized that if I become a clinical psychologist, I may be forced to work in a hospital where people are going through pathologies, your schizos, all those things that are almost called in normal language abnormal. And that means I will be maintaining them. I won't be changing them. Show me with a show of hand how many of you know people who have gone to Vescopis or Sterkfontein, have been discharged and been said, they are better now, they can function on their own. I didn't want to find myself in a point where I don't do that. They don't actually get discharged to say they are better now. They discharged because somebody is there to take care of them, and you are educated on how to take care of them, and you're educated on their medication, and you educate them on how to live. But in terms of their personal development, you accept that they are here, and that's where they're going to be. So with my intention, with my career, I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to be in a space where I can educate people, where I can guide people, where I can intervene in their challenges, where I can change lives positively, and where possible, I can prevent problems before they start. And so my modus operandi is learning from people who have been there before and going backwards. Because I realize that most of the time we live our lives backwards. We realize when we are 30 that we should have done XY when we are 20. When we are 50, you realize, oh, I should have started with my career or started with having kids when I was 20 instead of having my kids at 30. So my principle is starting at people who are 50, taking it back and educating people who are younger to go forward, knowing and having information. And for me, that is changing lives positively. How did I choose counseling psychology? When I was in high school, psychometrists of the time came to our school to do assessments with us and to try and guide us into proper careers. And I was actually told that I'm a candidate for medicine. And besides medicine, I can do any other related career within the medical field. But no one mentioned psychology. So I was either supposed to do medicine or do medical technology or do anything that's got to do with medicine. However, I didn't qualify for that. And my second option was to have a discussion, a conversation with my family, adults in my family. And one of my aunts actually said to me, at that point, she was doing her honors in psychology. And she said to me, why don't you do psychology? And I was like, what is psychology? Where will I work with psychology? What is that? It sounds like something that you can use somewhere, but not in a career. And she explained. And after explaining, I did my research. And after doing my research, I did my applications. I applied to the University of the Western Cape. I applied to Wits. I applied everywhere. I was accepted almost everywhere. but I chose to go to the Western Cape. That's where I started my counseling career. And then after that, I did my honors with Medunsa, which is now Sefako Makado, which was one of the brilliant honors programs that I did in the country, because it also gave us an option to actually become psychometrists at that time. But I was not intending to become a psychometrist. I wanted to become a psychologist. After my honors, I applied into masters, and I went straight into masters with the University of Pretoria. So it was a long journey, but a smooth one, because the difference is that I started with an end in the mind. Most of my peers left after junior degree, some left after honors. I want to work and stuff. I only said I want to finish, and I will start thinking about work after I finish, and that's exactly what I did. After qualifying, I had a lot of options. I could work in HR, I could work in OD, I could become a counseling psychologist, I could do consulting. Because at that time, after our internship, the program didn't force you to finish your research or your thesis while you were doing your internship. I had to do my thesis after my internship. But while doing that, I got bored. I thought, I won't be sitting home doing my thesis only. So the only thing I can do is to actually go look for a job. I phoned Bara, which is called Chris Hani Baragona now. I was called in a day, and the second day I met head of psychiatry at Bara. Third day I was called in to come and work. So I started working mid-month. So I started working at Bara as a post-intern with children. I was in a child psych unit, which was beautiful. It was amazing. I learned a lot about children, and I loved working with them at that time. And then while I was at Bara, I got an opportunity again. Somebody called and said, there's an opportunity at the then Vista University, which is now, Vista was swallowed by different universities. I was at Vista Mamelodi campus in Pretoria, and now it was taken over by University of Pretoria, where I work at the point. And somebody called and said, there's a position at Vista University, you want to try it? And of course I wanted to, and I went to Vista, and I was accepted. I took that position. It was beautiful. I worked with young people, teenagers, people who just finished matric, who were doing their junior degrees, and of course who had a lot of challenges. Imagine when you are 19, you are entering a new stage, you are becoming a young adult, you have financial problems, you have accommodation problems, you have this and that. So I was at the hem of those problems at the time. And while I was there, I moved into HR and doing OD. So yes, I was an OD deputy director. And while I was an OD, some consultants came to work with us when we are driving project within the OD space. And one of them had swallowed me up, invited me to work with them. That's how I went into consulting. And while I was in consulting, I decided to finish my thesis and make sure that I'm qualified. And as soon as I finished, I opened my practice. So I started with my practice in 2003. And while in practice, I did all sorts of things. I started in corporate, I consulted within corporate, doing employee effectiveness, employee relations, employee wellness programs, motivation, all sorts of things. And I also consulted with schools in terms of children who are struggling within schools, but when they have specific problems, I would refer them to educational psychologists then. And remember, at that time, there were very few Black educational psychologists, so I struggled. Some of the problems I had to solve myself, but however, where I could find educational psychologists, and mostly were located in Joburg, and parents had to drive to Joburg to take their kids there. But it worked for some time. And most of the time, I did wellness interventions within corporate and within public sector. So my journey has been with a lot of things, and I enjoyed every part of it. And what is important is that because I had an intention when I started, I made sure that wherever I go, I make a difference. And my motto was that I was as good as my last performance. So if I am with a client, whatever I do with the client must be the best, so that I get referrals to other clients. So I had clients all over the place. So it was fun. That's what I've been talking about, my journey, psychoeducation. And yes, most people would ask, how did you get into radio? I was very creative in my journey. Remember, in those times, clients were not just coming. You had to be creative about it. And my biggest friend at that time was listening to the radio. And one of the days, one of the radio stations were talking about careers and career guidance and things like that, and I was listening in, and I just sent a comment through email. The following day, the producer called me and said, "Do you want to be part of us?" And I've been in radio ever since. I'm in radio even now. So I do different radio stations. I do different TV programs. I even did a full program on TV that was focusing on youth having problems that were causing major problems in their families. I also did intervention programs on TV that were focusing on relationships and marriages. I did a lot of public talks. I also contributed in magazines. So my articles were published on magazines, in newspapers as well. So I did a lot of work on those. So I have a lot of footprint in terms of my work, but now all I need to do is to have and make money and convert that into money. How do you get here? How do you manage to have a sustainable career as a psychologist? Ask yourself critical questions, ask yourself tough questions. Ask yourself questions like, what can I do? What am I best in? What are my strengths? And what are my weaknesses? And what is your dream? What do you want to change? And how do you want to contribute? What is your vision? When you leave people, do you leave a good impression, or do you leave a bad taste in their mouth? What do you want to leave behind you? Your energy, and you have an energy that says to people, I want to be a psychologist as well. And I can proudly say, let me blow my horn for a little bit while, that I actually influenced a lot of people to do psychology. I had a student who was doing BSc, and at the time I was doing career guidance with BSc students. And she just, hello, my time is off.
Yeah, sorry to disturb. Just kindly asking if you wrap up.
Yeah, I'm going to wrapping up. So basically, keep your intention in line and keep your vision in line. Also, just listen to everybody, listen to people. Where there are people, there is a need for a psychologist, and where there is a need for psychologists, there is a need for intervention. And you will never, ever stop working. Just keep reinventing yourself, and probably find a space where everybody can access you. It doesn't have to be people who only drive, but can be anyone, but anyone can access you. And define a means where you also mentor other people into the career and into different other careers. Every space is a possibility for you to thrive. The only thing that you need to do, don't forget to make money. Psychologists have a weakness on focusing on problems and focusing on interventions and focusing on changing lives, and you forget to build the people. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
So as we reach the end of the workshop, I would now like to call upon Dr. Pitswane, who is the head of the Gauteng Region Counseling Department to do the vote of thanks for us.
Let me thank the Johannesburg office under the leadership of Mama Shuma Boa, who did the welcoming for us, for having organized this workshop that is very successful and very informative to our students. And of course, our program director, one of our interns, Letloga Nolo, thank you for having steered this program so well. And all the professionals who shared the information with us, we are really, really thankful because you took your time off work and to come and educate our students. The registered counselor, we thank you so much for having shared with our students the versatility of the scope of practice for the counseling psychologist, for the registered counselor. What is that they can do so that they should not think that it is not important. After your honors, you can just go and pursue that and be able to be employed and work. And of course, becoming a psychometrist, Ms. Rajab, we are thankful that you also have shared the inclusivity of this program of psychometry, that they can do the work, do the assessment. However, the diagnosis, they cannot do that. But at least you can be employed. We are thankful for that. Clinical psychologist, which is one of the most common profession that our students go into, and it is difficult to get into that profession. We are so thankful that you also shared the requirements to be one and what is needed, and encourage students to look for more opportunities, not only to zoom into clinical psychology, because there are limited opportunities to get into that space. And the research psychologist, thank you for opening the eyes of our students that it is not only about this other profession, we can also be a research psychologist, and breaking the myth that is surrounding this profession of research psychologist, that you can be a researcher, you can do a lot of things by being a research psychologist. So look into that, our dear student, because you can be successful also in that field. We thank you, Ms. Mobile, for that. And educational psychologist, which is a profession, of course, that I'm also in. Thank you, Mensudisani, for dispelling the myth that you can only work at schools. There are so many places that you can work at as an educational psychologist. And also, in addition to that, the medical legal field, you can also go into that, and which are opportunities available for us as educational psychologists. And the industrial psychologist, you shared so many options that our student can look into. Thank you, Dr. Dineo. We really appreciate the information that you shared with our student. And also, I love the fact that there is also an environmental psychologist, which is one of the professions that one never looked into. So don't limit yourself, look into that, and you can be able to assess the environment of employees, how they are working, and help them so that they can be very successful in whatever they are doing. And our last speaker with very, very intense knowledge. Thank you so much, Mem Mwekezi or Dr. Mwekezi. Thank you for sharing this information with us. And the diversity of counseling psychologists, we did not know that you can venture into so many options. Our dearest students, you have heard that. And don't forget to make money. Don't just be there and empathetic and sympathetic over the clients that you are working with. Ensure that you make money and become also successful in your field. Colleagues, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with our students. You are really, really touching lives. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you. And on that note, everybody working behind the scene, thank you so much for making this very successful. And also, people who are connected on LinkedIn, thank you so much, because we are getting very positive feedback that this workshop had really touched lives. Some people have had an opportunity to qualify as psychologists because of the information they got in this platform. I think the organizers, thank you so much for that, because you are really making a difference in other people's life. And that is why we are in the space of academia, to touch lives. On that note, have a great day, and we shall see you again tomorrow. Continue with our workshop. Thank you so much.
We are wrapping up for the day, but as Dr. P has mentioned, please do join us tomorrow for day 2 of the workshop. We will have stakeholders such as Cornerstone Institution, HPCSA, Department of Labor, Department of Education, and more. So do not miss out on that, and we hope to see you tomorrow.